And I have a question. See, after the last session, I sent that interrelationship between parts. Would it create any problems for metrical analysis because there is so much of flexibility or liberal
Um,
viravu and mayakam, right?
yeah, the it this is the I see the
The
term.
interrelationship between paths, which is basically about viravu and mayakam, how one path could have the features of another path. I mean,
Yeah, I guess generally think of the defining features of a metrical form
yeah,
as things that are um, uh, constraints that are not violated.
yeah, okay. Yeah,
So,
that
for
works
instance,
well with Venba, right? Yeah,
yeah, well, yeah. So Venbai would be a good example, but I mean, also in the Kalippa, you don't have cheers ending in uh, uh, uh,
yeah,
nira, right?
right, right, right. That is specific to
So,
Anjapa, right? Yeah,
so I think that as long as you can isolate certain rules, then the scope of variation can be
okay.
quite big.
Yeah, right, yeah. So it is different in Tamil poetry compared to Sanskrit or Prakrit? I mean, are they also so liberal? Or?
Well, uh, I guess the difference is it's kind of calibrated differently. So in
Okay,
Sanskrit, you have a repertoire of two major classes of meters,
okay,
and then which have different principles
yeah.
of counting. So the syllable counting versus the mora counting. But then within each category, there aren't any kind of higher level organizational principles. It is nothing like constraints. So Sanskrit generally doesn't have a theorized a metrical unit like the chir.
Okay,
And that's, I think, the major difference.
okay,
Because if you have an idea of the cheer as a rhythmic unit,
okay,
then you can bring a lot of different metrical types under a single description.
yeah,
So, for instance, if Vinba, if you didn't have access to the cheer as an analytical category, we would probably have to describe dozens and dozens of types of meters
yeah,
that have a family relationship, um, but you would still want to specify that
yeah, yeah,
relationship somewhere.
right, yeah. Okay, thank you. Right. You can send a mail to Talia. She's not here.
Okay, let me, yeah.
Okay. Uh, Today I thought I could talk about what's called Pavinam, and I don't think I have my finger on it yet, but I will try to share whatever I understand. When you read the literature as with the rest of prosody, you have the names of different Pavinams and examples of that. Trying to look for what unites all these different names. As we have seen, there are three categories. One is pa, that are four, and that goes by the name Wahai. So there are four Wahais of pas. The other one is called Viri, Pa Viri, which I have used in many places as kinds within a pa, right? A pa has many kinds within it. So that's called Viri. That is uh, when you unpack a pa, there would be more varieties within that. Uh, but it's also possible to look at viri as representing the notion of variations within pa. Right? So one is pa, which is defining metrical features or characteristics. The other is variations which are allowed within that, and variations are theoretically explained either as viravu or as mayakam. Then when we come to inam, the way I would like to look at it is that it is kind of expansion of the past, which is different from variations within a pa. Expansions in the sense that it is opening up the types of pa, so you have more things. More things are possible to be done. As I see the possibilities, they fall into three categories. One is structure, but the structure is also restricted to adi. Right? So the expansion is not done with regard to seed and asai. Right? The seed still remains null asai, it goes up to 5 asai, it doesn't go beyond that. And asai, there is no new asai in the whole history of prosody. The only thing is the uri asai, nerbu and nerebu are underplayed in the later theory. But when it comes to adi, one is the length of adi is expanded. That is, the number of seeds of an adi goes much beyond the 4, which Tolhapian says is the minimalist one. The other is the variations which are allowed in the formation of adi. Right? So in the variation we have similar. We have comparable variations in pa viri also. Right? In the kinds of pa, you could have sindadi and aravadi and getting mixed, or corollary coming in. So I think it would be a question of research to find out how how the expansion of the construction of adis in a poem differs from that is allowed in a kind of pa. I think there is something unique with regard to this is structural. The second thing is how the it seems it's about the relationship between the theme and the verse, right? So this the new notion which Bobinum brings in is which is described in Tolhapiam as oru porul nudaliya. See, that means that a single theme verses, right? So it goes beyond a single verse. So you could have like 10 verses which talk about a single theme.
Yeah.
You could you could immediately connect it to Padiham and things like that,
Yeah.
see, which is very common in bhakti poems, but not in Sangam poems. And the third the third one is about the about the content of the poem. Right? Yaparangalam says that you could have the enums which doesn't have one, he says, Urigisai, that is talking about some flow of rhythm, that is, it could have some kind of disrupted rhythm or something like that. And the other is Vilumiya Porul, that is, the poem should talk about the things which are exalted, not ordinary things. And there's a debate about that. I will point out some of the things of that thing. But basically, from my understanding, the enum differs from viri in two ways. One is this is more Isai focused. It's more for music focus, or it is more for singing. Already we noticed that in Pa, Kalipa has that property. It is associated with singing. So there is a shift from Osai to Isai. Right? In Tolkapi's time, both words are used interchangeably. But I guess that when we come to the time of Pavinam, Isai clearly means singing, not rhythm at all, if we say Osai is rhythm. So Isai is one defining, not defining, is a distinguishing feature of Enam as opposed to Pa and Paviri. The other thing which is crucial is that you cannot characterize or define a Pavinam without being in relation to Pa or Paviri. Right? So you can define Pas independently of each Pas symmetrical characteristic, but you would allow both Viravu and Mayakam. Right? Whereas in the case of Enam, these are not absolute definitions or independent definitions, but it is in relation to Pa. So in relation to Pa, you can guess that it is in this way that there is one Pa which has its own features, and then it is expanded or it's opened up to for some new features, right? So what it means in empirical term is that this Pa enums do not have a cheer of their own. That is, there is no urichir, as we say. See, the Pas have urichir, except Kalipa. Kalipa doesn't have urichir. Whereas no member of Pavinam has urichir. That is one thing. That also suggests that it has to come from some Pa which has a urichir, which gets expanded. And the other thing is, Pavinam do not have their own tale. Right? So if you take the Pas as well as Paviri, you would have tale. So even Kalipa, which doesn't have Urichi, has Kalitale. Right? But you cannot talk about, for example, the Urichira Virutam or Tare of Virutam. They don't exist. Right? So you have to define them in relation to your Pa. I think this is the crucial difference between kinds of Pa and enums of Pa. Right? because sometimes you find that both seem very similar or even identical. See, how do you differentiate an inam from a paviri or a kind of would be this character, right? So if you take Kalivenba, for example, it is a kind, right? It's a viri, right? It is, it has a Venba meter and many Venba characteristics, but it must have a Kalitale, right? So it's still defined by its own property.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas when you come to Inam, you don't have any such thing. It's always in relation to Pa or its Inam. Right? So the Inam could be Inam of a Pa or Inam of a Paviri, that is a kind of Pa. So you could have Inam of Venba or Inam of Kural Venba, like.
Okay.
Like that, right? And I think that is also given by the name Inam. I mean, Inam, as you know, the verbal root is yin, which is give birth to. Right? So the Inams are the one which are given birth to by the past. Right? So they still have their umbilical cord connected to the pa, right? So you cannot define it without relating it to the pa. That seems to be a feature which would characterize Inam vis-a-vis the kinds of pa, right? Because the Inams are not kinds of pa, right? So these are kind of offsprings of pa. As I said earlier, it is not a variation of a pa. It's a thing which comes out of pa, right? So then from historical point of view, Pavinam is not described or mentioned in Tolhapiam. Right? The first mention of Pavinam is in Kake Padinium, which is followed by Yaparangalam. So if Kake Padinium was a contemporary of Tolhapiam, there must have been two schools or something like that, or it comes later. See, for arguing that it was later theoretical development is that the literary scene changed from Sangam to Bhakti, right, at the post-Sangam period. So the Inam is a theory to account for that change in the literary forms of the post-Sangam period. So to answer the question whether these were not there at the time of Tolkapiam at all, I would say that maybe there were some of these what I call expansions of pas as opposed to variations of pa might have been there, but Tolkapiam probably looked at them as variations.
Of the same pas
of the same pa. I mean, that just hypothesis. But the point is, empirically, there is no Sangam Pa which could be identified with the name given to any of the Pavinam. Right? So the literary corpus, which could be described as having Pavinam, comes later than Sangam period. So in that way, there is some coherence between Tolkapia's theory of prosody and the empirical facts of Sangam corpus. Then this also goes with the fact not only the the varieties of literary genres expanded in the post-Sangam period, in the Bhakti period, but also the music comes in a big way in the Bhakti poem. When I say music, I use it in the sense of Isai,
Isai.
differentiating from Osai.
Okay. And
So-
Isai, we know what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, the kind of music that Bhakti poems are supposed
Yeah,
to
that
be
is one
sung
kind
to.
of music, but it could be there could be other kinds of music like folk music and
Okay.
things like that. So that also I think goes neatly with the fact I mentioned that the distinguishing feature of one distinguishing feature of Inam is Isai or is music. Right? So it is only with Tevaram we see the theory of Pan, right, which is raga, which is the music. Of course, in Sangam also we have this Palay and I don't know much about music, see how this developed, but singing of songs is it was there maybe in the Sangam period because we have in the literature the singers and dancers and things like that. It must have been there, but it might have been different from Osei, which is an ingredient of prosody theory, right? Whether the Sangam poems are sung or not is independent of this. Okay. So what I call expansions of the basic four types of pa are classified into three groups. Right? One is third Isai. The Isai is already there, and the second one is Viruttam, and the third one is Turai. Okay. So these are the three broader categories under which all Inam could be accommodated. And as far as the commentators go, they say that the Inams carry the osai of the respective paths out of which they spawned. Okay, so they say that it would give you 4 into 3.
Okay.
Right, 4 osai and 3 kinds of categories of Inam. So you have 12 categories of Inam. But I don't know whether I don't know whether anybody else knows how this Isai is matched with Osai. See, one theory which I think is more probable is Isai takes over Osai, right, when it comes to that. And that would probably explain the fact as one of the characteristic feature of Inam is that disrupted Osai, right? And that could be explained by the singing. I mean, I think when it comes to singing, it could gloss over some of the difficult. I mean, some of the problems of Osei. There are problems of Osei because, as we will see, the kind of metrical features from one pa into another is much more than we see in the kinds in the pa viri, right? So you would have as we saw with kinds also the Venba metrical structure in Kalipa and Vanjipa structure in Asayapa and all those kinds of things. They are much more. Actually, it seems that they could be ignored. right? So when we are talking about the pa kinds or pa viri, they were trying to explain it with these two concepts of viravu and mayakam,
Yeah.
right? Whereas when it comes to inam, it seems that anything goes, right? Except they use talai to identify which pa it is inam of.
Also, Tala is important at this point to understand
Yes.
whether we have a Kali Viruttam or an Assyria Viruttam.
Yeah, why you call it Kali Viruttam rather than Venba Viruttam or Asaya Viruttam is the Talai.
Mostly Talai.
Talai,
Okay.
right. So when it comes to Inam, Talai gains importance for the identification of the origin of the Inam.
Okay.
Right. And that would also tie in with the factor which we mentioned earlier that for Tolkapiam, Talai is not significant.
Yeah.
Right. He said that not only it is not a Urupu for him, but he said that if you know the Urichi, you will know the Vosa, you don't have to go Talai. Whereas when it comes to Tamil Inam, Pa Inam, for identification of an Inam, or the Ur of Inam, if you can say that, you need to go by Talai because everything else could be different, right? Yeah. Okay. Then as okay, as usual, Iramburnat doesn't want to say that Tolkapiam doesn't talk about this, right? He knows all the three times. Right? So he takes this tag. Okay, there is a Tolkapiam Sutram which talks about a concept called Pannatti, right? Pannatti, right? The Pannatti comes from the root pan, and Ilamburnat defines it as pan thotrivipadu Pannatti. Right?
Okay.
See, Pannatti is what creates pan. If you understand pan as equivalent to raga or close to raga, so that creates raga, then that comes to singing rather than the rhythm.
Yeah, they will
which
say
is the
that word.
characteristic
Yeah.
of that. So there is a lot of debate about what is meant by Pannatti in Tolkapiam.
Okay.
There's no consensus about that. When you look at Perasiriyar's interpretation of that, he equates it with folk songs.
Okay.
Right? So he uses எழுத்து பயிற்சி இல்லாத புற உறுப்பு பொருள்களை பன்னத்தி என்பார். So whatever poem which is not written would be pannatti. I mean, if all Sangam was orally transmitted, but this is what we call folk kind of thing, which doesn't get to the literary status or doesn't get into the literary theory.
So, sorry, but then that would identify Pannatti as something that applies to composition that have nothing to do with all the rules we've been talking about so far. Like with the pa rules.
That's very likely. Because
for Perasiriya, I mean.
Yeah, for Perasiriya, this is not written down. These are the songs which are not codified.
Okay, so they this is very strict rules of like Seyul and
right.
and all
So
of that
the Seyul Urupu, I don't know. No, I should take back because Pannatti is one of the units of Seyul.
Okay.
Right? So, but that you have to look at it because Urupu for Tolkapiam is much broader concept.
Okay.
It's not constituting elements alone, right? He also talks about under Seyul, he talks about riddles and proverbs and mantras and all those things. So he might have included Pannatti as a category of
in
folk
its
songs
own,
in
yeah.
it as a Seyul, as a composed one.
But not
But we don't, I mean, the question would be like whether all the rules of prosody of pa would apply
Like
to
Panna.
Nurpa, right?
Yeah.
Sutra or something, something. Obviously not, right? Some might apply, like Todai might apply in Nurpa, but not Tale as far as I know, right? Similarly, you could have a thing like that with Pannati,
Okay.
right? Yeah. But what Ilambura does is he makes a categorical statement, Pavinam eninum, Pannati eninum okkum.
Okay.
He says that these are same kind of thing. So from that, I mean, he goes by the feature of Pavinam, which I said Isai. Right? So Isai is a distinguishing characteristic of Pavinam, and therefore Pannati must be referring to Pavinam. Right? And I think he himself had to convince himself for this kind of interpretation. He says at the end of his commentary, whatever I have said so far is obtained by the ukti of Urayil Kodal. So he uses the right of the commentator to see meanings which are not there.
Okay.
Right? And also he says that right includes to read what others said in one work.
Okay.
So he gave maybe he was not very. I mean, he is aware of the historical development, but he wants to read in Tolkappiyam what came up later, right? And the solution of Perasriya, I mean, as we have seen in many places, that he is a kind of protector of the tradition, Tolkappiyam tradition. Then when he says that when he rejects Pavinam, he doesn't reject it on an empirical basis, because at his time it is everywhere in Tamil literature. He rejects it on a theoretical basis. He says that all you call Pavinam could be explained or could be called as one of the varieties of Vasa. Right? He specifically gives the example of Kochaha Urubohu. Right? Kochaha Urubohu is basically, you could have a Kalipa only with one internal unit. So like that, you see, these are could be units. So you don't need a separate theoretical apparatus to have a Pavinam. Right, so you can understand it within what Tolkappiyar has said, right? He see that okay. So yeah, he also says, we'll see with specific example, Paras's argument also includes another aspect, which is that whatever the later grammarians say as specific features of Pavinam are contestable. For example, this is an obvious one, that the Pavinam may not have Vilimiya Purul, exalted content. He says, no, that cannot be true, right? So he tries to accommodate the Pavinam into the kinds of poems which Tolkappiyam describes. Second, some of the specific characteristics attributed to Pavinams by the Pavinam theory are not valid. Right? So let us see something, right? So let's take Talisai. So Talisai, in the context of Kalipa, is a kind of low rhythm, or so it is. It is. So okay. So that is taken to define an enum also. As I said, since the enums apply to all four parts, you would have Ven Talisai, Asuriya Talisai, Kalit Talisai, Vancha Talisai, like that. It goes to, you know, to everything, right? So, so it's, yeah. So let's take the example of Kural Talisai. So Kural Talisai should be, I have been using the word kindred for enum, is the kindred verse of Kural Venba, right? It has two lines like Kural Venba, and the final line is shorter than the previous line. I mean, these are the two bad minimum characteristics of Kural, which it applies to Kural Talisai. Okay. 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 Let's see. Okay.
But can I ask you
Yeah.
a question? Though one thing that Sai, Viruttam, and Turai, they do so they are types of paths. So we are explaining how they actually are connected with them and depend on them. But then they also have an internal coherence as a category. I mean, when we have this Viruttam poem from Kamban to Naidadam to whatever, just at a very first basic outlook, right? They look very regular. You have all stanzas of 4 lines, and then you go into it and you see that on the basis of Tarai and line and whatever, every 20 verse or something, they go from Assyrian to Vemba to whatever, and so the Viruttam, like the Pavinam changes, it becomes related to another part, but it's also kind of like there is also
Yeah, of
something
course,
which belongs to the Pavinam, which is so obvious,
Yeah,
right?
right.
But that would be the number of lines. So when we're talking here about Tarisai, right? What would you as a
Yeah.
Pavinam? Would you
Right,
have
right.
like a which I understand less than Viruttam. Here we're looking about Kural Tarisai that comes from Kural Vemba. But is there something about Tarisai as a Pavinam that is its bare bone, like its basic
Right.
definition?
Right. Okay. So the definition given for Talisai, that is for Kural Talisai, is that the last line does not have a reduced number of Cs.
Okay.
And that is a definition of Kural Venba, right? Not Chir and Muchir, right? But here it doesn't have to have that.
Okay.
So that is one, whatever you call it, expansion or opening up or something like that, which Pavinam does, right? And it does not share other properties of Venba, right? Actually, this is the property of Venba when it is embedded in Kalipa, right? So we saw that Venba could occur within Kalipa, as a unit. That is, Talisay could be in Venba meter, it could be in Asriya meter. Right? So that Venba has this kind of free feature, right? So that is also in the Inam. Right? So the rigid definition of Venba won't be found in Ven Talisay.
Okay.
Right. This is the second criterion. Right. The other one I mentioned the rhythm and content. I put it like devoid of the standard, quote unquote. That is Volihisai and Virimiyapur. Right?
Okay.
So if you take it as the standard, that is as a general property of any poem, you should have the rhythm, you should have high content, and but Inam cannot have that. Not it cannot, does not have to have that. Okay, that is. These are the three characteristics given to Inam that would apply to Talisay also. Right? And in addition, the Talisay would have the literal meaning of Talisay. It has low rhythm, whatever Talisay means. The problem is we don't know what it means, right?
Yeah.
So it should have Talisay. Okay.
Okay.
So by these criteria, one would call Kuralenba, an apparent Kuralvenba, something which looks like Kuralvenba, but it is not Kuralvenba, it is Kural Talisay, because it makes these three kinds of thing. That is, in the line formation, it's not Chir and Muchir, right? And the second, it doesn't have to have even Vendalai.
Okay.
Right? You remember that in Kalivenba, you can have Kalitalai.
Yeah.
Right. And the third one is the content is substandard.
Okay.
Right? So that's a difficult concept to understand what they mean by that. See, it's very hard to say that you could have poems on not so elevating topics or something like that, because the Inams are on elevating topics. If we take all Bhakti poems, you cannot say that it's not Vilimiya Purul, right? Okay. So Perasiriya's criticism to these criteria, right? As I said, Perasiriyar critique has two dimensions. One is it could be explained by the existing categories. You don't need Inam.
Yeah.
Right? The second one is the criteria which are proposed for Inam are not maintainable. Right? So, for this, see, the one argument he gives is that one argument he gives, it is misleading in the sense that you could have a Kural Talisai which may not have Talisai, that which may not have the low Isai. Let's say Isai here is melody. Okay. So you could have Kural Talisai which does not have a low melody. But I mean, that is a difficult at our time to question, because the commentators claim that it has Talisai.
Yeah.
So we have no way of saying no, it doesn't have. Right. So so that is a debatable point. And the second critique of Perasiriya is that the criteria are too permissive. Right? It allows many things which you would not like to do. So, so he says that the same point, a verse without the Olighisai and Vilimiya Purul are not poems at all. Right? So
Okay.
you are including more than you should do, right? And then the third critic is that they would have negative consequences. The example he gives is that so okay, if you allow Talisai Inam with non-elevating content, then it could be extended to Talisai in Kalipa. That's not acceptable, right? So that's a negative consequence of diluting the content of that, right?
Okay.
So these are his three major
Perasiriya.
criticisms for not accepting it. The problems with this critique is that empirically there are plenty of, whether I don't know whether everything could be argued against in the way Perasiriya does. The second thing is that the various Inam poems in Bhakti literature cannot be reduced as subtype of Kalipa, as Parasiri believes that things could be brought under Kocha Kalipa. So empirically it would be hard to do. So I mean, one conclusion could be that Parasiri's position is ideological. It's not empirical.
Yeah.
I mean, he believes tradition has not changed, and so there is another meaning in which Talisai seems to be used, not just the lower melody, which is the property of what we know from Kalipa as Ottalisai. So Ottalisai is you have three or more than three on the same theme, right? So that seems to also apply to Inam, as I said, that when you take Padiham as one poem, see, you have 10 verses with the same theme. That would be that would also go under Talisai, right? So to get a feel of that, if you have the handout, I've given from Yapurangalam one
Kural Talisai.
நன்னுவார் வினை நைய நாள்தோறும் நற்றவர் கரசாய ஞான நற்கண்ணினான் அடியே அடைவார்கள் கற்றவரே. So okay, so this is an example of Kural Talisai. Okay, why it is a Kural, that is Kural Venba, is that it has the Tadai of Venba. Right?
Yeah.
You have does it have? No, you should have not the first one. Nannuvar, Vinay Naya. Okay. Vinay Naya, you have Nirai.
Nerai.
Which one?
Nannu is Ner. Right?
Nannu is Ner, that is not
Tema. Varvinay is Ner, so that is.
Yeah, so that's not Vendarai.
Yeah.
So, but the next one is Vendarai. Vinay is Nirai and I is Ner.
Yeah.
So that is one Rata, right? So that is one.
But then you have again.
Yeah, anyway, I mean, it seems that even Talai has a lesser role to play in identification of part type.
Okay.
But the minimum.
Where on the handout is this verse?
It is the one I said
fourth page, I think.
Under the heading Talisai.
Third page, maybe.
So, I mean, it starts with
The top of the page is a kind of
there's a
Vemba
paragraph
and
getting
instance.
Tadisai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is from Yaparangalam,
Yeah.
Vritti, right? So the question, let's say, let me go this way, right? This way. See, this is Kural Tadisai, right? It's an example of Kural Tadisai. That means it relates to Kural Venba, right?
Mm.
So the question is, how do you know that this is Kural Venba?
Right.
Right.
Or-
I thought Talai plays a role, but now looking at this, Talai is not such an important. But I'll have to look at how the Talai is. But it means the minimum criterion of Kural Venba, that is 2 lines. It has 2 lines, and the penultimate line is longer than the final line. It's there. Right. Only thing is, it's not 4-3.
No, it's 8-4
Right.
or something.
Yeah, 8-4.
Right.
So, so that's an interesting question. We had to look at it empirically. What is the minimum characteristics which would determine that this is Kural Venba?
But it
Right?
seems to me that here, like a line of 8 seer is very long, no?
Yeah, right.
That
Yeah.
is something you wouldn't find in Kural.
No, as I said, no, that's why it is enough.
That's why it's Tarisai. This one
Yeah,
is-
first of all, first of all, it becomes an inam.
Okay.
Right? It's an inam of Kural Venba.
Okay.
Under the inam, this is grouped under Tadisai.
Okay.
Right?
It's
Right.
an inam because it derives from it, but it's not quite it.
Inam?
I mean, it's an inam of Kural Vemba because it derives from it, it looks like it, but it's not quite the thing.
Yeah. Inam has to be that. It cannot be
Yeah.
the same, right?
Yeah.
It's a kind of expansion or opening up. But the first question would be, why you call it inam of Kural Venba,
Yeah.
not inam of Vanjipa, right?
Yeah.
See, Vanjipa should have minimum of 3 lines. See, it
Yeah.
doesn't meet that. So it goes to the bare minimum characteristics of the past, and then all other violations, quote unquote, would be considered as the properties of Ina.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So I thought Tadai plays a role. I had to see how much the Tadai plays a role to say that this is Venba.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But it is Kural. It is Kural Venba in the sense that it has 2 lines,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the penultimate line is longer than the final line, or the final line is shorter than that, right? That's a very bad minimum definition of Kural Venba, right?
I mean, because ultimately this could also be 3-4 seer lines.
You mean a different way of breaking the line?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or well,
That-
maybe not because there is
So,
Yedugai. Kan.
Yeah, right.
Nannu.
Kannu, right.
Yeah.
That would decide that. So let us say that what are the expansion or opening up of Kural Venba? First is the number of C's. That's
Yeah.
an obvious thing. And the second one is the final seed of Kural Venba must be an asachir, and also the asachir should have Uriyasai. That is Nerbu Nerebu. It doesn't have. Right?
Yeah.
It's not asachir, actually it is muchir.
Yeah.
Right? And also Yensin Ye, which is a property of Assyrian.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's also another expansion, right?
Okay.
Another, I don't want to use violation, right? But because this is accepted as a valid pa,
Yeah.
right? So that is the second one. I thought that it is it sticks with Kural Venba with regard to Talai, but there are some breaking of Talai, but you have to look at whether it is permitted Talai. When Venba it is easy, no other Talai is permitted. So there is a violation of Talai also here. But in some of the poems I looked at, the Talai is a anchor which says that this is this pa.
Okay,
Right.
but just to rephrase my question that I before, so now we can see the all ways in which this verse deviates from Kural Vemba, but yet somewhat looks or is related to it. So we think about it's an inam of Kural Vemba, but we have to understand how. But is there anything in the verse that would make us think this is Tarisai? I mean, is there anything that this is
This is
specific
this is
Pavinam?
what they say, what the commentary is. This is Talisai. I have no way of saying that this Isai is not, this melody is not low.
Okay, but Talisa is determined more or less by the Is. I mean, it's recognized the Talisai stanzas or verses would be determined by the Isai.
Isai.
There is
That's a
no
melody, by
there
the
is
way.
no like, for example, number of Adi or things
So
like that.
number of adis are mentioned in Kalipa.
Okay.
Right? Talisai would have normally 3.
Okay.
It's line. But see here also, okay, I'll put it this way. If you go through the definition given in Yaparangalam, they also give some lines to define Talisai. Right? But to me, it doesn't make any logical sense. I mean, they look at the poem they have and say it comes 3 lines or 4 lines or something like that, right? That is true not only of Talisai but also of Viruttam, etc.
Okay.
Right? So it's more a kind of data-based thing, right? I don't see any connection between the number of lines and Talisai.
So you
Right.
wouldn't read the Tarisai as a type of inam, as something that goes towards stanzaic poetry,
That goes in?
towards a stanza-based things, the same way Viruttam
I think
clearly does.
I think that comes. Okay, okay. So the enum allows expansion in adi, not in seed and asai. So the expansion in adi is extend the length by the number of seeds. That's one. The other one is the variations in the lines and how they are arranged, right? And the third one, which I think relates to your question, is that the lines could be bundled up in different ways.
Yeah.
Right. So that would suggest that stanza would be a unit how you bundle up. So it's not a running one. And this kind of thing is true of all Talisai, Turai and Viruttam.
They are about bundling up.
That is one feature of expanding. I mean, that's not the right word, but this kind of opening up, see, it includes that, right?
Okay.
The number of seats and the way the lines are organized. Okay. So in this one, it would be Talisai. So as far as whether it has that particular kind of melody, I have no way of knowing. Right? I have to accept the commentator on his word. Right? This is Talisai. Right? I mean, this is very doubtful because if you remember that Talisai, when Talisai is defined in Kalipa, it says the let's say, let me call it melody, whatever it means. The melody of Talisai is lower than the melody of Taravu.
Yeah.
It's a relative one.
Yeah.
Right? Here, if it's an independent verse, there's no way of making such relative comment. Right? I mean, Talisai, unless you talk about the swaras, right, low and high kind of thing, and that would be not in the verse, but it would be the way you sing it,
Yeah.
right? So that's an entirely different thing.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not very sure what they mean by Talisai. I mean, when a commentator says that Thalam Battu Vandadu.
Okay.
Right. So, whether this particular verse is required to be sung in a lower swara, or I don't know. Right? But the other sense of Talisai is given not for Kuralanba, it wouldn't apply to Kuralanba, for other Venbas which have more lines, which are larger, that is,
Yeah.
you would have the same theme repeated 3 times or 4 times like that. So that would be Talisai by the other criterion, Oru Purul Nudaliya.
Okay.
See, that kind of thing, right? So okay. Take the next word. This is also an apparent Kuralvanba, right? It is more Kuralvanba than the previous one because it has 4 seed and 3 seed, right? Vandar irungundal varivazhakkai vanudalan pandayal allal padi, right? So here the Appurangalam commentary says that if you take the Thalai of Irungundal and Varivazhakkai, it is Irungundal is Kaichi, right, followed by Nirai, that is Kalithalai. Right?
Okay.
Vendalai would be Kaichi plus Ner.
Yes.
Right. So this is Kachi Pranit Kalithalai. So because it is Kalithalai, it cannot qualify to be Kural Venba.
Okay.
And therefore it is a Inam.
In Inam. And this is
right?
also Talisai.
And this is also an example of Talisai. Right? Okay. But there's also another violation, is Padi, which is not, it is Asachi, one seed, one aside, seed with one aside, but it is not Uriasai, right? It's not near. So there is a expansion or something like that. But you also remember that Kalivenba allows Kalithalai.
Yes.
It's a definition of Kalivenba, right? It would have Venba meter everywhere, but somewhere you should have Kalipa, preferably in the last line. You should have Kalipa. So the question again comes, why this is not a kind, but it is an Inam? Right? So my conclusion is that when you call Inam, it is multiple, for want of a better term, I'll use violations, right? There are multiple violations in that, right? Then it becomes Inam, not just one. If it's only Kalithalai and everything is okay, I think this will be considered as Kalivenba, not as Ven Talisai, Kural Ven Talisai, or Kural Talisai, right?
Okay, but just out of curiosity, so something like Tirukural would have all proper Kural Venbas, or are there?
Yeah, no Inam.
No Inam there at all. Okay.
Right. See, I don't know. I mean, that is to me, it's an empirical question. If there are violations, first you will try to accommodate maybe Viravu, maybe Mayakam. So if you cannot do any of those things, you say Inam. Right? So I don't know whether anyone has done that exercise. Right? So you cannot accommodate within the theoretical concepts of Viravu and Mayakam, and therefore it cannot be a variation of Pa.
Yeah.
It has to be something which spawned out of that.
Yeah.
Right?
No, definitely. I mean, the reason why I was asking before is that though it seems to me that after a certain point, let's say second millennium, like half of it even, that it's clear that these Pavinam are doing some like more heavy lifting than just being residual categories. People don't use them because they don't make a real Kural Vemba or etc. People use them because they want to make a Tarisai or like a Virutam or things
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah,
right?
right. You are right.
So there
See,
is
see,
a, there is definitely that switch happens.
my guess there is the singing takes upper hand.
Okay.
So whatever you violate, whatever you do with that, you see, if the singing, the melody goes well,
Okay.
right? It's fine. I mean, this is what we see in when Sangam poem is set to Carnatic music, right? Uh, there are some places where it didn't fit with the music, and they will somehow gloss over that, right? So it's something like that, right? So whether it is whether it doesn't disrupt the melody, then it is fine, right? I mean, that's my guess, right?
Okay.
Yeah, right. Okay. So the so the okay. So the first one is an example for the adi length could be different in Inam, right? And the second one is an example that the Tarai could be alien, right? Therefore, it becomes Inam, right? And the third one is an interesting one. It's not, the content is not
Fitting.
exalted or I don't know why they say that. See, Tididum mena nindru mula adira padidam pailhu கூத்தரும் ஆர்த்தனரே, right? The dancers are dancing to the drum, right? So this is the example given by Apparangala Virutti Urayasiriyar as not having an exalted content or flowing rhythm. Right? There is no way for me to say it is there. I don't see any hint that the content is not super or something like that. So all these verses are claimed by the commentator to have Tadosai, which is not very verifiable by us.
Yeah.
Right. So okay. So this is about Tadisai in the Venba. You could have this. You could have the same same thing with Alavadi Venba or Samanala Venba, and all kinds of kinds of things, right? Okay. So far, what's your sense of Inam, right? I see. It's a kind of breaking away things, right? Right.
Yeah. I mean, compared to Tolkapiam, you mean?
Compared to the definition of Pa as well as Paviri,
Yeah.
right? Right. So, you see, in both of the things that there are limits of variation, right? Whereas here there doesn't seem to be any such thing. That's my guess. I don't know. I should ask some traditional scholar how they react to these kind of
Yeah.
statements.
And how
right?
inclusive they are, because I'm wondering whether one could use Pavinam to describe types of lines that usually, I mean, let's say, if we have an Ammane,
Yeah.
the type of lines like these couplets, these are not any of the Pa that we were talking about.
No, that Yeah, okay.
I wonder whether Pavina can accommodate this kind of things too, like this different.
Yeah, I mean, Pavino gives more leeway to the poet.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Right. But if music is a determining factor,
Then you should give
then
him.
you should have a musical ear
Yeah.
to do that, right? See, with the Pa, it has been insisted that Osai is the guiding principle,
Yeah.
whereas here Isai is the guiding
Principle. Yeah.
guiding principle, right? Right. So then the another enam is Virutam, which is, as we know, is very popular in Bhakti poetry. And one author points out that some of the names of works like Thiruviruttam of Malvar or Upper have the title Thiruviruttam. But he says, I have to check, he says that the actual verses are in Kalitturai, not in Viruttam, so we don't know the relationship between the two. And then in Sivagya Siddhamani and Kambaramayana, this Viruttam is the one. So this is a very popular enam. You have for all Asariya Viruttam, Kali Viruttam, etc. So it is so popular that it allowed the creation of Virutappa as a Venba, etc. But it's not online with the fourth part.
Yeah.
See, it's not Virutappa is not a fourth part type created. For the reason I mentioned earlier that it doesn't have its own seed, it doesn't have a Urichi, it doesn't have a Tarai of its own. So these are the characteristics of four types of Pa. And the second thing is this could be understood or analyzed only in relation to another Pa, like Asariya Virtam, etc. Right? Okay. So one thing with Asariya Virtam is the Virtam, I think by the meaning, is expansion or making things larger. So here the growth or expansion is the length of an adi, the number of seed, right? In the minimalist grammar, it is 4 for Asariya Pa, right? But it can, according to the Aparangalam, it can go up to 10. So a line could have 10 Cs. So the name for that is Kalinadi Adi. Anything above 5 would be Kalinadi. Kalinadil Adi. And then it would have it would also so if you have Asariam with lines longer than 4 Cs, it would be a candidate for Enam.
Yes.
Right? And then as you have in Asariyappa, you would have kinds within that, kinds of Enam. So if all the lines have the same number of Cs, let's say that a line has 8 Cs, that makes it an Enam. If all the lines of that Asariyappa have 8 lines, then that would be Nilai Mandila Asariyappa Enam.
Okay.
Right? So, I mean, Enam could go with the larger part type as well as the kind of parts. Like, see, like that. I mean, that's also another reason to say that Enam could be analyzed only in relational terms, right? Not an independent or absolute term. So this the increase in the number of C's in a line doesn't seem to have a chronological progression, in the sense that some earlier authors have longer ones and later authors have a shorter. The shorter one, as I have mentioned, and there. And Perasirier, who comes much later in the 13th century, puts their limit 6 to 8.
Okay.
He's
But
conservative. After Yapparangalam, everything, after Yapparangalam opened it up for 10, he said, no, it is not more than 8. Right? So this is, I think you can understand this, that the Virutham in Assyrian, or anywhere, extends the number of C's, and the limit of extension is left to the individual authors, right? The grammarians have different limits, right? Yeah, okay. So this raises a whole question we discussed with reference to Syriac at Perine, right? You can divide the 8 into 4, but what the problems are, etc. That, right? Then the okay. Okay, let us look at another one from Assyriapa, which I sent, I think, this morning.
Oh, the separate file.
Yeah, separate file. So that is an Assyria Virutham because it has 8 C's. Right? Arihi varum kilimuriyal amildam thondi agan polilvai munaipparavi adendamanda. Okay. So this why this is Assyrian? It has the Assyrian Tare, right? Varam Nirai and Kili is Nirai. Nirai is Assyrian, right? So you can check. I didn't check the whole word, but so I mean the first question is this: if this is Assyria Vritam, right? We know it's Vritam because it's more than 4 C's in the line. But why it is Assyrian?
Okay.
I think we'll have to look at which property of Assyrian is adhered to in this one. I think this one has Assyria Tare. Right? But also somewhere in the middle, I think this the third line, Varu Talir. Sorry, Varu Talir. Yeah. So. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's say that the third line, Varu Talirin is Kaichir, right? But followed by Nirai, Narumeni, right? That is Kalitale, right?
Okay.
Right? It's not Vendale, right? So you have an Assyrian allows Mayakam of Vendale.
Yes.
Right? When you have Kachir Nir. But having Kalitale in Assyrian is an expansion, which makes it Inam. Right? Right? And also it has Kanichir somewhere.
Okay.
So Kanichir would be Vanji Urchir. Right? So if you have Vanji Urichir and Kalitalai in an Assyriapa, which makes a good candidate for more number of violations, right? More number of freedom. See, yeah.
Can I ask so I have to admit I'm having a hard time trying to keep the violations
Okay.
in my head, but there's no claim that in order to be an inam of Assyria, it should not have ventili, right? Because this does have ventili in
Yeah,
it.
it does, because Assyrium allows that. So to say that this is Assyrium, it has Assyria Talai, which is which works with the Yachid, and it has Vendalai, which is also admitted as Mayakam. So that would qualify it to be Assyrium. Right? But the appearance of Vanji Urichir and the appearance of Kalithalai in it would make it an Inam rather than Assyriappa.
Okay.
Right? That's what my understanding is.
And why would it be an inam of Assyriapa rather than of
Yeah, because it follows the Assyria Talai. You say Arihi Varum Kili Moli. Varum is Nirai, Kili is Nirai. So that is an Assyrian. Right? So not Venba, that is Assyrian. Therefore, that's why I thought that Talai plays a crucial role to define the category. But we had some problems, so one has to look at because I mean, so one has to keep in mind where Viravu is allowed, where Mayakam is allowed. Right? So then you can ignore that. Yeah.
Is that Assyria Talai or Kalita? Because it's first cheer is Kaichir, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it is Arihi Varum. Yeah, it is Kaichir, right? So Kaichir with Kili, yeah, then that would be Kalitale. Yes, you are right. Yeah, it will be Kalitale. Probably one should look at whether you have a larger number of metrical features of Assyriapa, right? Yeah, I mean, of course, the last line ends in ye. That's not the strong feature of Assyriapa. I don't think just an occurrence of ye would make it an Assyriapa. There must be other things, probably Talai. And by this time, I think, the Assyria Urichir would be the Uriya Sechir. They have lost relevance. Right? Therefore, you cannot use that Nerbu Nerebu kind of thing for Assyria. What else is a defining characteristic of Assyriapa, right? See, the defining character of Assyriapa first is two seed.
Yeah.
I mean, Irasite seed.
Yeah.
Two aside. That's violated here. And then you should have not Chiradi. That's violated here.
Yeah.
Right? And you should have Assyria Talai, which is irrelevant, let's say. But one thing is when Sir Vendalai is here, right? And then it should end in A.
Yeah.
Right. Of these, we had to see which ones qualify it to be an Assyria.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I also think that there is something, I mean, in my very ignorant use of like understanding of Viruttam so far, I think that Assyria, when verses are so long, and they don't have other additional things that make them, for example, Kalitalai, Kaliturai or something that need to be broken up in certain specific way, they are usually Assyria Viruttam. Like these long lines.
Yeah.
Without much in terms of like constraints.
No, that is true. I mean, it makes it a Viruttam clearly.
Yeah, no, but it also...
why does it make it an Assyriam rather than Kali Viruttam or something like that?
I don't think a Kali Viruttam can be like this in a way. And I mean, I think that there might also be a logic between the different types of Viruttam.
Then I'll have to look at whether there is a definition which is given that Asuriya Vrittam could have longer lines,
Yeah.
8 or 10 or something like that. So if that is a uh, uh, if that is the criterion for that, still the question is why it is called Asuriya Vrittam when it doesn't have any other Asuriya feature.
Other than the
It is,
final A
then
or
it is just a
something.
fiat.
Yeah.
Right? So if you have more number of lines, I put it in this basket,
Mm.
not in the other
Because I'm
basket.
pretty sure that Kalivaruttam needs to have 4 seer
Okay.
only.
Only, okay.
So these long lines
So
are
then
really
that question
typical
is
of Kali.
still, see, we are debating the question of Inam, which major box you put in.
Right.
Right? So you can do it by fiat, right?
Mm.
If you have longest line, you should go to Asriya, whatever the rest is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it's. I mean, I understand the question of why it's still Assyrian is important. I'm just wondering whether one should work from the two directions and have also a certain understanding of
Yeah,
Viruttam.
that is true. I mean,
Yeah.
see, it might be easier to classify it as Asriya Vrittam given the claim that Asriya Vrittam would have longer lines,
Yeah.
right? But if you ask the question, what's the logic behind it?
Yeah. No, of course.
Right? I mean, you can say that this is what Yaparangalam says, that's fine, right? Right?
Fine
But
with me.
I would like to go a little deeper into it. Why Aparangalam says
It is still Assyrian.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. So we had to look for that. Maybe if I scan the whole thing, something might come
May
up.
make
Say,
sense. Yeah.
In terms of that, right? Then okay. Then the last one in this one is Viruttam of Venba, right? Which is called Veli Viruttam. Right? Veli stands for Venba. Venba Viruttam is Veli Viruttam, and here you have 4 lines of the standard Venba, right?
Yeah.
And also it has the standard features of Irasai. Okay. You have the Irasai, but it doesn't have the other characteristic of Venba, namely the penultimate line would be shorter. Right? It should be Sindari. It's not there. So that qualifies this to be right, right. But if you remember that when we talked about the kinds of Venba, one allowed the kind of Venba all. I don't know whether it was Venba or Asripa. I mean, all could have the same number of seeds,
Yeah.
right? So if it is there, then again the question is how a enum differs from a kind. So here, so this is called enum, right? And also it is called enum, which is called Viruttam, right? Because of instead of 4 seeds, it has 5 seeds, right? And so that's a Viruttam, there is an expansion. And the another thing which makes it enum is the last seed is Tanichal.
Yeah.
Right? And the Tanichal occurs in each and every line, unlike the minimalist Venba, where the second seed would have Tanichi, right? So these would make it a candidate for enum, right? And then this but when you look at is Tarai, think I was wrong. I said it's characterized by Vendale, but this is near, right? It's not Vendale.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
near.
Solal. I mean, that's not, that is Asariyatale, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't have, right? I'm right,
I mean,
right?
it goes with near.
Near is not Vendale.
No, it should not. But
It should be Asariyatale,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's because the agreeing is Asiriyatala, no? Agreeing in near.
Yeah, right. So the next one is Thiyavai Sol, that is Nirai Ner, that is Vendale.
And also because all of these are years here, so they are.
Yeah, Yetzir would be both for
Yeah.
Venba and Asariyappa.
Yeah,
right?
no, so.
Only Talai would make it. I mean, this is the converse
Yeah.
of these 2 poems. So again, I think one will have to count. I mean, again, the question is why this is in Venba,
Yeah.
right? We have to count the number of Talai. Maybe the predominant, I mean, the highest number would determine that, or
I think this is quite
something like that.
homogeneous. I mean,
Yeah, most
Kollal, Pullal,
so you
Kollal,
think,
Nillal, they are all.
Asariyatale is
Yeah,
more common, right?
it seems.
Yeah. So even the last line doesn't have the asechi, right? So all C's have the same number of all lines have the same number of C's, right? So I think that question still remains. You see why you call it
That way, yeah.
Ganba, right? So with this question, I will read Yapurangalam again, whether they give you any clue, see why they call it as Venba, rather than just giving us an example of Veliviruttam. Right?
Yeah.
Right? And this one, I mean, yeah. So you remember that when we discussed Asariyappa, we had one kind or one variety of Asariyappa, which is called Adimari Mandala Asariyappa. Adimari Mandala, each line is a proposition. You could change the order of that. The same thing is here. He says that first line and second line are interchangeable, right? So this is called Adimandala Veliviruttam. So what is used to classify the kinds of Asariyappa is used here to classify the kinds of kinds of Inam in Venba Viruttam. So this point of the Adimari Mandilam is not a concept specific to Asariyappa. It's a very general Asariyappa where you could interchange the lines, which could apply not only to Pa types but also to Inam. You could do that, right? Okay. Then the next one is Thurai, but I couldn't put my finger into that. So, so my sense is that the Thurai has something to do how the theme is organized.
Okay, so it's a content-based one.
That's my guess. But all the examples, all the descriptions which Apurangala Karihai and Irambur give doesn't seem to indicate that. They again go by so many number of lines. Right? So I find 2 problems with that. One is why should it be? I mean, what is the reason behind that? The second one is that one will have to make a big chart of saying of all these Inam and the number of lines. My suspicion is there is a lot of overlap.
Yeah, there
in
must
that.
be
And they
4.
say X has 3 lines, maybe Yam also has 3 lines.
Yeah.
Right? That kind of thing. I didn't do that exercise, right? So I mean, you should remember that Turai is another inam in addition to Talisai and Viruttam. And Viruttam is the popular.
So, but
inam.
is there a way in places in which there's particularly used? I mean, clearly Viruttam is used to basically write Perum Kapiam. After
But
point,
Viruttam you have in Bhakti also.
and you have in Bhakti also, etc. But one can like, it's not the only thing it does, but one could probably map a connection between genres, types of text, and the stanza, etc. So I was wondering whether there is some text that you know of that have Turai as a thing, like some genres.
Ragas.
No, genres,
Genres, okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
that have Turai. I mean, whether one could also work out these new types of genres, all of this Trivakyam genre, etc., and whether some of these Pavinam are also specifically connected with
that's an
certain
empirical
genres.
question we have to see. But I think that there might be a connection for this technical term Turai with the technical term Turai used in Aham poetry.
Okay.
Right? Tinai Turai. I mean, Turai is a more specific one
Okay.
among Tinai, and also the explanation is that it makes access to the content direct or something like that. So that's from that I was hypothesizing that Turai as a inam also is related to theme,
Okay.
content, but I may be wrong. Right?
Okay.
So,
I also don't know anything
besides
about it, really.
the statements in Yaparangalam by the number of lines. So when I read that, I mean, it looked whole random.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah,
I don't think
it works.
like that. There must be some system.
Okay.
behind
Can I ask a question about Viruttam?
Yeah.
So am I right to generalize from the examples that you've given for both the Asirya Viruttam and Veli Viruttam that both of them differ from the standard Asirya and Venba, mostly by not marking any of the lines differently. So you won't shorten the penultimate line in the case of Asirya Viruttam, and you won't shorten the final line in the case of Venpa. So is it a characteristic of Viruttam that they have lines of equal length throughout the verse section?
Yeah, since you have mentioned that, seems to be a possibility, but I will check again whether because Viruttam, maybe I'll have to check. That could be a characteristics of Viruttam. Right? Would that make sense if to the point that the Viruttam is melody based? I mean, you cannot have different lengths of line for melodies, or you can. I know nothing about music. Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking of it in terms of, I mean, especially if there are long poems in Viruttam where you would kind of want every line to be recited in more or less a similar way. So that might differ from the recitation of Asaryapa or a Venba.
Okay. So since music is related to that, I thought I would play how the music is. Yeah, the one is about Sandam, which is I think Tirupugal song or something like that. So you could see that the later poems change from rhythm, whatever is called by Vosai. I mean, there are other things to
இது வந்து தனன தானன தனன தானன.
yeah, this is talam based. It's
இது
not
தன
C based, right?
தானன தனன தானன தனன தானன தனன தானன தனன தானன தனன தானன அரணையுள் குவி பிரமநூருளம் பரணையே மனம் பாவிய பரவி ஒய்மினே காண உள்குவி வேணு நட்புற காணுவின் கடல் பேணி ஒய்மினே கைய கண்டனே சிறபுறத்துளம் அரசை நாள்தோறும் பரவி ஒய்மினே நரவமார் பொழில் புறவ நற்பதி இறைவன் நாமமே மரவ நெஞ்சமே சரணம் ஐயப்பா சரணம் ஐயப்பா சரணம் ஐயப்பா
சாமி சரணம் ஐயப்பா. அதானே
அது நீங்க இன்னைக்கு புதுசா வரக்கூடிய எந்த யாப்பும் இந்த இதுல எல்லாம் அடங்கிடும். அந்த how exhaustively அவங்க வந்து சார் ஹரிவராசன அந்த பாட்டு ரொம்ப பாப்புலர் ஆச்சு. இந்த இந்த யாப் எங்க இது நம்ம பழைய இதுல இருக்கு. சரி, இப்ப இது போல பழைய வண்ணத்தவர்களுடைய பாட்டு இது இதே வந்து பின்னால வந்த ஒரு வளர்ச்சி ஒன்றும் சொல்ல வரணும். பின்னால சந்த பாட்டுக்கள், சந்த பிடிப்புடைய பாடல் அதுல ரொம்ப கம்பீரமானது சந்தம். அவங்களுக்கு எல்லாம் அந்த சந்த திருப்பல் எல்லாமே 4 அடி பாட்டு தான். பாட்டு பெருசா இருக்கும், ஒரு அடியில பல சீர்கள் இருக்கும். இப்ப ஆசிரியப்பான்னா 4 சீர், ஆசிரியப்பா தலை வச்சுனா 4 சீர். இப்ப இதுல இந்த கணக்கே கிடையாது. இவங்களுக்கு வந்து அந்த மன்ன தர்மம் தான். ஒரு 4 அடி பாட்டு, அந்த ஒரு அடிக்கு எத்தனை சீர் வேணாலும் இருக்கும். இது வந்து ராமலிங்க சாமி திருவடி புகழ்ச்சின்னு ஒன்று பாட்டுக்காரு. ஒரு அடிக்கு 100 சிறுவானா 130 சீர் என்ன வரும். ஏங்கப்பா பெருசா அது புத்தகம் 4 அடி பாட்டு. அது பார்த்தா ஒரு கதை மாதிரி இருக்கும். அதுக்கெல்லாம் அடிப்படைங்கன்னா திருப்புகழ். இப்ப இது மாதிரி சந்த பாட்டு மட்டும் சில சொல்லிங்க பிடிச்சதா நினைக்கிறேன் சார். இப்ப அந்த சந்த குடிப்பு பாருங்க. இது வந்து குர்லினையா வருது. குர்லினை அந்த சீர்கள், அதுக்கப்புறம் ஒரு மெல்லோசை தன தனநதம் தனம் தந்தனம் தந்தனம் தனதனதம் தனம் தந்தனம் தந்தனம் தனதனதம் தனம் தந்தனம் தந்தனம் தனதான தனதனதம் தனம் தந்தனம் தந்தனம் தனதனதம் தனம் தந்தனம் தந்தனம் தனதனதம் தனம் தந்தனம் தனதான. இது வந்து கண்ணுடைய வர்ணனை, பெண்ணுடைய வர்ணனை பாட்டு. ஆமா, புணரிய மணங்க நம்புஞ்சொரும்புங்கருங்கள் இனுடு கண்டையின் ஜண்டனுங்கஞ்சமும்புது நிலவருந்தியும் தொஞ்சனஞ்சும் ஒரு பெரிவேலும் பொறுவனை கன்ற கன்றங்கும் இங்கும் சுழன்றிட கடைசி வந்து வஞ்சம் பொழிந்தெங்கிலும் புவி இளைஞ முன்பகின்றம்போ நின்கம் பீத குழை மோதி குணலையடும் இந்திரியன் ஜஞ்சலங்கண்டிடும்படி அமர் புரிந்தஞ்சங்கடஞ்சந்ததங்கொடும் செய்து சங்கொடும் ஜிங்கி தங்குங்கடை கணினார்வா குலவல சந்தனம் தந்து தந்தின் பொருள் திரிவிதகரணங்களுங்கள் தனின் செம்பதங்குருக வகையந்தியின் சந்தியும் சொந்தமற்றமைவேனும்.
4 வரி தான்
இல்ல, இது 2 வரி.
2 வரி
இன்னும் பாக்கி இருக்கு. இது 2 வரி தான். இல்ல அதுதான் இருக்கான். இப்ப இந்த திருப்புகள் இருக்க
இன்னொரு தடவை படிங்க.
அந்த ரிசல்ட் சொல்றேன். இந்த திருப்பு இருக்க குடித்தலை பக்கத்துல கடம்பந்துறைன்னு ஒரு தலம் இருக்கு. குடித்தலை பக்கத்துல, குடித்தலை திருச்சி. ஆமா, அது தென்கடம்பந்துறை சொல்றது. அது வந்து ஓசை போயிடும்.
அதான் ஓசையும் போயிடும், பொருளும் போயிடும்.
பொருள் போகாது, ஓசை தான் போகும். இப்ப இது வந்து பெரும்பாலும் மெல்லெழுத்துக்கள் வந்தது.
He makes a point to ஓசை போயிடும், right? When you use it, I mean, sing it as sandam, right, talam, then osai poirum. So there is some kind of relationship between the osai and isai. I mean, see he also makes the point when it comes to Arnagiri Nada, the sandam is important, right? And that allows these poets to use colloquial words and foreign words and things like that. So for the breaking of the taboo from Tolkapiam that don't use Sanskrit words in that, basically because it would affect the osai kind of thing with aspirates and things like that. When it comes to Sandam, that rule is broken, right? So that could be the case why the tarai could be broken and things like that. You see, it's the music which determines the flow.
Because he gives here the also somewhat of just the rhythm of the song at some point. No, he gives
Yeah,
this
first
like tana
rhythm.
tana tana. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and the verse he sung is about the description of the eye of a woman, and that is from, I think, I don't know, he said something, right? So that follows that kind of sandam.
The sandam, that pattern specific, that rhythmic pattern.
Yeah, and that also he says doesn't have a limit to the line. He says that there is a verse of Ramalinga which has 120 C's in a line, right? So it's a 4-line verse, but each one has 120 thing, right? So I mean, what I'm saying is, I mean, this has something to do with singing and music, right? We don't know
Makes sense.
what it is. The other one, we'll see the okay. This is setting it to Carnatic music. Yeah. So he puts it in the Carnatic music, one of the Thevaram songs. You'll see the whole the flow of music changes.
இது ஒரு காலத்துல இந்த கேரளாவில் சோபான சங்கீதம் சொல்லுவாங்க. அது பூஜை முடிஞ்சதுக்கப்புறம் ஆண்டோட மகிழ்ச்சிக்காக வேண்டி இந்த டக்கான் அது கலி விருத்தம்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. வாசில் வீணையும் நாளை மதியமும் வேசு தென்றலும் வீங்கிட வேணிலும் மோச வண்டரை பொய்கையும் போன்றதே ஈசன் எந்தை நேடி நீடலே இதை பெருமாள் கோயிலையும் சாப்பிடுவீங்க.
So this is the way of recitation.
இந்த கலிவிருத்தம், இந்த கலிவிருத்தம் தான் இதனுடைய கொஞ்சம் வேரியேஷன் தான் நமக்கு இந்த இது சொல்றாங்க சுப்ரபாதம்.
So he says Suprabhadam is Kalivirtam.
இதெல்லாம் கலிவிருத்தம். இது பண்ணுல சொல்ற போது நாதநாமக்கிரின்னு ராகத்தில் போடுவாங்க.
Yeah, this is setting it in Thevaram. Yeah.
பாட்டு இருக்கு.
So you could see that seed is not the unit at
Yeah.
all, right? The way it's saying. So, I mean, the same metrical structure could be, when it comes to music, could be done in different ways. My sense is something happened with Enam, right? To do that.
To allow for that.
Yeah, right. Okay. So.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, I mean, there are things I couldn't explain, but I hope that we will struggle with that kind of thing, right? Yeah.